From the platformer craze of the 90s to the brain-rotted battle royale wasteland of today, many people can recall when a certain style of game was all the rage back in the day. One in particular that I am most fond of and nostalgic for is the piss filter era. This era spanned from the mid-2000s to round about the early 2010s, and was defined by developers who decided to put a yellow tint over their games and make everything really dark and grey. Now, many younger viewers may reel back at the thought of a game not being multicoloured, loud and obnoxious, but it was an effective and iconic style for the time. Many popular video game series utilised this visual style, like COD and GTA, but my personal favourite franchise from this era was Gears of War. Specifically the first 3 games. While Gears of War is still going today, and there's been way more than 3 games, the other games just don't hit the same as the original trilogy does. Hopefully E-Day will get the series back to form, and give me that sweet hit of gothic shooter I'm in need of. Gears of War is one of the OGs of gaming. It defined a generation of Xbox users, and turned them into some of the most toxic people in society. Even now, you could be walking past someone who once upon a time wouldn't hesitate to wall cancel their way towards you. Despite being one of the most popular Xbox 360 originals that helped launch the iconic console, it doesn't get nearly as much praise as the likes of Halo, and maybe I'm just biased, but I've always preferred Gears. Now objectively, you could say Halo is better. More in-depth mechanics, more in-depth sandbox, more interesting lore, more interesting characters, but I don't care. I'll play anything Gears. I even played that Gears Pop game just to feel something. People seem to underestimate the power Gears of War had, and kind of still has, over the industry, with countless brand deals, action figures, celebrity voice actors, guest appearances, and even having the game appear in Fortnite, which is of course the magnum opus for any video game franchise. GAO is recognisable for so many of its aspects. The iconic weapons, monsters, characters, and the sweaty wall bouncing mechanics are all aspects of the games that separate them from the rest. Gears was, and still is, my favourite game series, and I thought it was about time I talked about the genius of the original trilogy. Obviously not all in one video, because that would take too long to edit, and I'm not sure our attention spans today could take that length of time. I'll break this series down into 3 videos, starting with the original that created a multi-million-dollar franchise, but this game wasn't always the Gears we would grow up with. During the early 2000s, Epic Games had just come off the success of creating Unreal Tournament, an arena-based FPS, and were in the midst of creating another Unreal game series, with this one being titled Unreal Warfare. This game was to have a class-based system, giving the player a more tactical experience compared to the Unreal Tournament's chaotic nature. They decided to shelf this game and go back to Unreal Tournament, but by the time they got back to work on it, the trajectory of video games had changed. There were a lot more single-player story-driven games coming out, and so Cliff Bleszinski decided to change with the times. The majority of the game's identity was changed from the ground up, turning it into a horror-inspired third-person shooter set on a planet that had been taken over by subterranean monsters. An early behind-closed-doors demo highlighted these changes, and showed early signs of what would later become Gears of War. A few changes here and there, a few cut enemies, the addition of one of the most iconic weapons in gaming, and in 2006, the Gears of War we know and love was born. Now that we're all caught up with the history, we can now talk about why Gears of War is so goated. Gears of War, shockingly, revolves around a war between humans and the Locust, who are a race of subterranean creatures that hold a grudge against humanity because they use skin lotion. One day these guys were so pissed off they decided to emerge from the ground and kill about 25% of Sierra's population in one day, leading to this day being named E-Day, Emergence Day. The first Gears of War actually takes place 14 years after E-Day, because Epic Games wanted the world to have a destroyed and worn out style, and also because they knew 20 years later they would sell the rights to a new developer and then they would go on to make a prequel. That was nice of them. The story follows Marcus Phoenix, a guy who's been locked in prison for the past 4 years for some unknown reason. I mean, we find out, but not in this game. Spoilers and that. Marcus isn't much use in prison, so his good friend Dom and his robot Jack break him out, and the story follows this lovable duo's journey to turn the tide against the Locust forces, all the while making friends, losing friends, and witnessing the unimaginable horrors a war with literal monsters forces upon you. It is fun, trust me. The game is so good in fact that it got a remaster, and then that remaster is getting a remaster, but you may have noticed that I'm actually using the original version of Gears of War to make this video, and while I am a fan of the remaster, there's several aspects of the original that just can't be beat. I mean, for one, the characters don't look like they're made out of Play-Doh. Despite many outsiders looking at Gears and thinking it's nothing but brain-dead blokes with massive arms shooting roided up monsters, it's a lot more elegant than that. Well, I don't know if elegant is the right word. It's not your typical action game, as combat is heavily linked to the cover-based system. Cover is integral to your survival, whereas games like Halo and COD encourage the player to rush into a firefight without blinking. Doing that in Gears of War will get you killed, and the game teaches you this very quickly. The prison is a great starting place to get the player familiar with the rules of the world. There's plenty of columns, barriers, and concrete slabs that all provide protection from incoming gunfire. Of course, you can't just sit behind cover all day, because eventually enemies will be coming to get you, so you have to be picking the right times to pop your head up and pop their heads off. While in cover, your maneuverability is arguably better than when you're out of it. You can peek over cover fast from different angles, allowing you to fight enemies coming from different directions without exposing yourself, mantle over cover to close the gap between enemies, zip from one piece of cover to the other, allowing you to flank enemies and stay hidden, and you can even blind fire over cover, allowing you to keep enemies at bay while you heal, or read one of the many Gears of War comics or novels. The cover system of Gears of War was inspired by Bionic Commando. Cliff Bleszinski was a fan of how the game made you move from platform to platform, and thought having the player rely on moving from cover to cover would give the game a unique edge. This game truly masters how cover should work in video games. While you can superficially take cover in other games, it always feels a bit janky, and you're not using cover, but are rather just hiding behind it. Gears of War made hiding behind cover badass. With how much damage enemies take and how little you take, there's no point trying to be a hero, as you'll just end up dead. It also gives Gears a grounded feel. Having a game feel realistic despite you fighting giant lizard men is an impressive feat, to be fair, and also makes the whole game feel immersive. No sane person sticks their head out during a firefight. Well, unless you're Carmine. See? So forcing you to keep your head down for most of the time gives you a little bit of anxiety when you actually have to pop out to fight an enemy. This rule for cover obviously only applies to the campaign, because online players use it for a very different reason, which I'll save for later. The simple act of running also aligns with this movement style. When running, the player stays low to the ground and hunched over like a roided up Quasimodo. While it looks goofy compared to other running mechanics and animations, it's very practical when you think about it. Keeping your head down while running allows you to flank enemies more effectively, and adds to the already immersive combat. While Epic Games took many of the original tactic elements out of the game, a few managed to survive the shift in genre. Despite the class system being scrapped, the game still revolves around the player leading their squad through levels. Well, lead is a strong term, as most of the time you're just reviving them because the AI is shit. Dom in particular is constantly trying to get himself killed. Epic Games attempts to give the player control over their squad by giving you squad commands. These allow you to somewhat control very niche actions of your squad, like telling them to attack enemies, when to cease fire, and when to regroup.
Regroup! Right with you.
It's a mechanic that's appeared previously in other video games, and on paper it sounds really good. On paper, I don't think there's ever been a more pointless feature in a Gears game, to be honest. It would make sense if these commands determined how combat scenarios played out, but you are always expected to kill every enemy on your screen. Making your squad cease fire during a skirmish like you're going to negotiate with these monsters seems like a ridiculous thing to implement, and they don't need any more encouragement to attack Locust either. A game as testosterone potent as Gears requires some badass weapons for you to use. You've got the standard guns like a pistol, revolver, shotgun, and a sniper rifle. But Gears decided to lean into this ultra-violent conflict and give everyone ultra-violent weapons. The most recognisable weapon of them all is the Lancer, but funnily enough, it nearly didn't make the cut. It was actually a late addition Cliffy B added to the game to give it some edge, but Microsoft, being pussies, thought it was too violent.
Well, I guess Peter Moore's contention about the saw is that it's a little, over-the-top gory.
Yeah, you can body someone into a million pieces with a shotgun and stomp on their head like American History X, but God forbid you chainsaw a man. Luckily it stayed in and became a gaming icon. The Lancer is your standard assault rifle, but with a chainsaw bayonet on the end of it, creating a very interesting gaming mechanic all on its own, which is chainsawing enemies in half. To do that, however, you need to leave cover, which means you need to carefully pick when to use the Lancer's blade. While you may want to just go crazy with it, you'll just get the piss shot out of you, so you need to wait patiently like a cobra before striking an enemy in campaign, or an unsuspecting noob in multiplayer. Also, chainsawing an enemy is worth doing for the loud yell, chainsaw rev, and the spectacle of watching the enemy dance around on screen. While the Lancer may sound incredibly violent, it's probably not the most violent weapon in the game, and that's really saying something. The Hammer of Dawn is probably the second most recognisable weapon in the series, thanks to its sheer destructive capability and its disturbing lore. Basically, when the Locust started coming out of the ground and humanity was backed into a corner, the COG, Coalition of Ordered Governments, decided to fight back against the Locust by hitting them with satellite-operated lasers. It was a pretty effective tool, but the problem is they essentially killed most of the human population in the process. That's why a lot of the architecture in the game is in ruin. It wasn't the Locust who did that, but the COG. Another core mechanic of the game is the active reload. Most games that involve guns have simple reload mechanics. It's often an overlooked area of gaming that is supposed to be as easy as simply walking or teabagging an enemy, but Epic Games decided to add a little risk and reward element to the act of reloading. When reloading a gun, players are given a small mini-game that allows them to reload their gun faster. Players can simply choose to reload their gun and carry on fighting, ignoring the inviting allure of that little white mark in the middle of the line. Good luck with that, it's impossible to resist for long. Pulling off a perfect reload allows for a faster reload and an increased rate of fire, massively increasing the damage output of certain weapons like the Boltok and the Torquebow. Reloading in the grey area simply rewards you with a faster reload, but completely missing both the white and the grey areas causes you to jam your gun. A simple mechanic like this adds so much to the gameplay of Gears, and has since become an iconic element of the series, and is a necessary mechanic to master if someone wishes to set foot in multiplayer. Epic wanted Gears of War to be simple in its design. They want to convey things through an easily digestible format, which is why the HUD is so simple. Having too many things on screen to keep track of while juggling the job of bouncing from cover to cover and shooting enemies would be very overwhelming, so Epic wanted to convey the most important things quickly and simply. Your ammo count is only shown when firing or aiming your weapon, and it's tucked away right in the corner so you can keep focused on what's in front of you. However, some things are so important that you need to see them right away, which led to the iconic damage mechanic. When you take damage, the red cog symbol will begin to appear, and the more prominent it is, the more damaged you are, and death leads to the whole icon being on screen, essentially mocking you for being crap at the game. It's a very humbling experience when seeing this symbol, and it acts as a reminder to keep your head down. When it comes to switching between weapons, the third-person view makes it easy to keep track of what you have, and with a simple flick on the D-pad you can quickly cycle between your weapons. Sometimes though, you don't need a weapon to kill enemies, all it takes is the bottom of your shoe. I'll save the other weapons for when I talk about the enemies of the game, the Locust. Gears of War likes to incorporate the lore of the game into the actual gameplay. By that I mean the majority of the time when you encounter enemies, they will come up from the ground through E-holes. It acts as both an exciting mechanic, as a location can quickly become filled with enemies in a matter of seconds, and it acts as a terrifying reminder that enemies can be all around you without you even knowing. The Locust are a terrifying faction that give Marcus and the gang a run for their money. Drones take up the bulk of the Locust forces. Despite being one of the lesser enemies in terms of deadliness, they can still fuck you up if you don't respect the cover system. Drones come in many different flavours, most wield hammerburst rifles, while others use lancers and pistols, and some of them even man massive mounted machine guns. Snipers are crafty bastards. These guys hide in buildings and on top of rooftops, and will suppress you with high damaging shots while other enemies close in on you. The most effective way to fight snipers is to of course beat them at their own game. On the complete other end of the spectrum are grenadiers. Get too close to these guys and they'll fuck you up, as they wield shotguns. These bastards are the enemies most itching to kill you. They'll charge your position, forcing you out of cover, so it's best to try and kill these guys straight away. Wretches are the little shits of the Locust horde. These monkey dog looking things travel in packs and love nothing more than scratching your balls. Like the drones, one is never that dangerous, but a large group of them can easily overwhelm you, especially the ones that come in the extra spicy flavour. These next few enemies I've saved for their own section of the video because they have the potential to instantly kill you, and they also go hand in hand with some of the weapons of the game. Boomers are the tanks of the Locust army. These guys ignore the rules of cover and simply stand out in the open, absorbing your bullets. On top of being living, breathing pieces of concrete, they fire boom shots that instantly kill you if they make direct contact. Thankfully they aren't too smart, as they basically tell you when they're about to shoot. So waiting for that sound cue is an easy way of countering them. You can also pick up the boom shot, which does a lot of area damage. Theron guards are another enemy that pose a serious threat to you. These guys walk around in badass looking armour and shoot explosive bolts at you. These evil bastards also love to hiss. Bit rude. Their Torquebows are great weapons to take, as they're essentially explosive sniper rifles. These guys are the main enemy Locust you will be fighting throughout the game, but there's a few more that add to another aspect of Gears of War, and that's the horror. Gears of War took a lot of inspiration from other game franchises. The name Gears of War itself was a love letter to the Metal Gear series, but there was another goated game that inspired Gears of War, possibly the most influential horror game of its time, still regarded as one of the greatest survival games ever made, and is constantly brought up in conversation for the game with the sexiest twink award. I'm obviously talking about Resident Evil 4. Epic Games loved the third-person view the game popularised, but this wasn't the only aspect of the game they decided to incorporate into Gears. Cliff was also a fan of the horror aspects of the game and wanted Gears of War to take a similar approach, incorporating exciting action set pieces and moments that scared the shit out of you. The atmosphere of Gears of War is impressively imposing. Shooters at the time weren't very brutal. There was obviously violence, but they often glamorized war. Halo in particular is flashy, colourful, and the music makes you feel unstoppable. But from the very first level of Gears of War, you realise that this game is taking a much different approach. The visuals of the game are very muted. Very few colours are used, which paints Sarah out almost as this war-torn wasteland, which it is. That's what years of conflict will do to a planet, I guess. The locations which you fight in are eerily beautiful, with huge columns, statues, and art pieces standing proud all these years later, while at the same time appearing broken. Each area of the game looks like an oil painting. The lighting, the buildings, the harsh environments, it all makes the whole experience immersive, which is heightened by the already immersive gameplay. Epic Games wanted the game to feel cinematic, and it doesn't disappoint. These visuals add so much to the horror of Gears of War. People will be quick to judge how dark the game is at times with its dull colours, yet will suck off every survival horror game with the exact same colour palette. The reason this shit is so dark is because it's supposed to be scary. I know many Gears games in the future lost this element, but at its very core, Gears is a horror shooter. Enemies are meant to be scary and scuttle around in the dark. While I guess it isn't all doom and gloom, they let you visit a botanical garden and have a ride on a choo-choo train. This is why I prefer the original version to the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah, right.
Besides making the characters look like complete shit, the Coalition completely changed the visual style. The lighting is brighter and the environments are a lot more saturated, massively taking away from the horror as a whole. This is why the original's design is so much better. The world feels real, not cartoony and fake. The original Mad World trailer for the game perfectly encapsulates this. It's dark, emotional, and horrifying all in the span of a minute, and this is expanded on in the full game. Well, the emotional aspect is saved for the sequels. It's not just the environments that make Gears scary, it's some of the monsters too. The Locust utilise a lot of creepy crawlies to spread terror across Sarah. Corpses are essentially giant spiders that burrow from underground, making giant tunnels, and make anyone with arachnophobia have an anxiety attack. You end up fighting one of these things, which is a bit of a ball ache. Well worth it though, just to see Marcus mog it. Darkness alone is pretty scary, because you don't know what's in it, but with Gears of War, darkness is scary because you know what's in it. During the game, there is a segment where you have to traverse an old shanty town when it's pitch black. Fighting Locust in the dark would be pretty eerie on its own, while Epic Games decided to make the dark even scarier by having it be infested with flesh-eating flying bugs. Krill are nocturnal creatures that only come out at night, and much like a Redditor, they are hypersensitive to bright light. Anything that stays in the dark for too long is painfully ripped to shreds. Thankfully, in a war divided by race, the Krill do not discriminate, as they will eat humans and Locust alike. These guys create their own unique game mechanic for Gears 2, as they require you to stick to light sources and create new ones in order to get through the level. Corpses and Krill are both terrifying in their own right, but the thing is, they aren't even the scariest things in the game. That's reserved for the Berserkers. Anyone who grew up with this game knows just how triggering that word is, and how PTSD-inducing that scream is. Berserkers are the war crime of the Locust. These things are blind, but have heightened smell, hearing, and strength, like a roided up daredevil. The introduction of the first Berserker is a moment that lives rent-free in my head. Before this, the game wasn't too bad. Everything up to this point was just standard spooky shooter vibes. These bitches turn the whole formula of the game on its head for the duration they're on screen. You fight 3 of these things throughout the entire game, and spend less than 15 minutes with them combined. Yet despite your short time together with these lovely ladies, they leave a massive impact on you, and stand out as one of the most frightening moments in Gears to date. You never fight these things on an open battlefield, it's always in an enclosed space, which as you can imagine is very stressful. Epic Games were adamant that they wanted Gears of War to be a cinematic experience. They wanted the player to get lost in the world of Gears, get invested in the stories of the characters, and be fearful of the enemies that lurked below. The cutscenes of the game are some of the most iconic in gaming. Without getting too much into the story just yet, these cutscenes captured just how terrifying this war was for humanity. But one of the best things about Gears of War is that it was wasn't just cinematic during the cutscenes. Instead of having story beats and set pieces always happening during cutscenes, Epic Games took the time to incorporate set pieces during gameplay. Set pieces range from simple e-holes opening up, to helicopters crashing and buildings falling apart. Having these things happen during combat makes the world feel so much more alive, and makes the stakes feel that much more real. Epic was so proud of these set pieces, they made sure to let you know when one was going to happen, by letting you zoom in on the action. Come on, our level designers spent ages making these, please look at them. Gears of War has some of the coldest character designs, enemy designs, and weapon designs, and in order to match this intensity, it really needed some great sound design. Which it does. Now, unfortunately, for some reason Microsoft struggled to properly port an Xbox 360 game to the newest Xbox, so while the graphics look good, there is now a slight static effect to the audio. And though it's only slight, once you notice it, it starts to feel like a torture technique. Without taking that complete fuck up into account, thanks Microsoft, the sound design is class. An aspect of Gears it enhances is the combat. Everything sounds so much more violent and deadly thanks to the visceral sound of the gore. There's a reason why the chainsaw mechanic is so famous. It's because it's so damn satisfying. The headshot sound on its own is enough to get you bricked up. Don't look at me like that, it's true. The sounds of the Locust are great too. They give the enemies in this game such memorable voices and noises. On one hand it's great because it adds a lot of variety to the world and makes the enemies scary, and on the other it's great because it allows you to quickly decipher what you're fighting without actually seeing the enemy.
Great. Now what? Are you kidding me? Berserker!
The weapon noises in this game are so unique and iconic, and give the world of Gears of War an old, yet new vibe. Despite using trucks and helicopters, people are using sky lasers, robots, and shotguns powerful enough to dislocate your shoulder, and the sound design perfectly captures these aspects of the game. Gears of War has some of the most satisfying sound effects in gaming, and I'll die on that hill. Since fighting isn't a constant, as firefights will usually have a small break in between them, Epic Games needed a way to convey to the player when a fight had finished, or they had accomplished something significant, and they did this by using this genius sound effect. God, that sounds so fucking good. If only that played in real life when accomplishing something. Oh look, my divorce came through. There's no way people would be as bothered to perform an active reload if it weren't for that crisp whoosh sound it makes when you pull it off. Even some of the noises that seem minor in the grand scheme of Gears of War are so great, like the main menu interact sounds, and when you pull up your TACCOM. These sounds define Gears of War just as much as Marcus and the Mandem. I've already talked about the atmosphere of Gears of War and how great it is, but a major reason as to why it's so great is the soundtrack. Kevin Reapel, sorry if I butchered your name, was the composer for Gears of War, and his score perfectly encapsulates the gritty and dark atmosphere the game has. The main menu theme sets up the rest of the game so well, with its mysterious and creepy nature, as players were not yet familiar with the lore of the game, besides from a few snippets. It's also a very depressing sounding track, almost giving off a defeatist tone, like humanity is on its last legs, which is expected in a 14-year war against these things. A lot of the tracks create great tension and atmosphere, blending traditional military march anthems with a hint of horror and otherworldly sounds. These hybrid tracks create memorable moments and add to the great visual cues and set pieces, making them that much more impactful. Then there are those tracks that are solely meant to fill you with dread. These tend to play during times when combat isn't happening, and they heighten that tension you feel when you know something is around the corner. You can tell Epic wanted everything in the game to feel epic in scale, and the music fits this so well. They could have used generic scary music and action music for most of the soundtrack, but they chose to make each track feel different from the last, incorporating different sounds, instruments, and tones. Of course, not every song is moody and gloomy. Combat is made so much better by the fast-paced and heart-racing themes for when you're under attack by the Locust. They both act as an encouragement and a warning, almost like there's a tug of war between you and the enemies. No fight in this game is guaranteed, and Gears makes it a habit of reminding you that you're constantly in danger, but you are also the danger. It's this level of creativity that makes the soundtrack of Gears of War stand out amongst other shooters even today, and without spoiling anything, it's a concept that the second game explores even more, to an even greater effect. Arguably the most underrated aspect of Gears of War, even to this day, is its story. Gears of War has some of the most interesting lore and characters that have been explored not just throughout the games, but throughout comics and even novels. The first Gears of War sets up the world of Gears so well, with an intriguing premise of a war hero turned turned traitor, an enemy that continues to surprise humanity 14 years into the war, great characters with memorable personalities, and a cliffhanger that really puts into perspective how dire the human-Locust conflict really is. Marcus Phoenix is one of the coldest video game protagonists of all time. Voiced by John DiMaggio, he encapsulates the tone and mannerisms of a war veteran who survived countless life-threatening situations. Even after spending 4 years in prison and having his best friend Dom break him out, he seems pretty unfazed.
Welcome back to the army, soldier.
Shit.
Marcus has been released from prison because it's basically all hands on deck for humanity. They are on the brink of extinction, and so everyone is needed for this supposed master plan for humanity. While some are happy for Marcus to be back, like our boy Carmine.
Wow. Cool.
Hoffman, on the other hand, is not.
Looks to me like you need all the help you can get.
Shut up, you fucking dick.
There's still a little bit of bad blood between these two. Marcus is assigned to Delta Squad, which consists of Dom, his best friend, Lieutenant Kim, the leader of the squad, and Carmine, the drippiest member of Delta Squad. These four are in charge of locating and regrouping with Alpha Squad, who have a device called the Resonator. This device is going to be used to map the Locust tunnels underneath Sierra, so the cog can essentially bomb them into extinction. Delta comes across a group of dead gears who they initially mistake for Alpha, but are quickly told by Control, aka Anya, to head to the House of Sovereigns. After a quick firefight, our boy Carmine has some trouble reloading his gun.
See? Sniper!
Yep, that right there is why you need to keep your head down. Poor Carmine is KIA, but luckily Delta runs into the GOAT, Cole. Cole is an ex-Thrashball player and a celebrity in the world of Gears. Cole is a part of Alpha, so he teams up with Delta to go find the rest of his squad, who are pinned down outside the Tomb of Unknowns. Several dead Cedars and Locust later, and Delta finally reach Alpha, where we are introduced to Baird and a couple of red shirts, Gears. Right before a rescue helicopter can pick up the two squads, the Locust ambush them, downing the chopper and shooting the piss out of our boys. During the fight, Kim decides to aura farm, but is sadly put in the crosshairs of the main villain, General Rahm. This big bastard kills Kim, and everyone else is forced to fall back inside the tomb. Here we get a little insight into the character of Baird. He's got a big brain and an even bigger ego, coming across like a knobhead, despite us saving him moments ago. Unfortunately, Marcus isn't allowed to slap Baird because they are interrupted by a Berserker, and this is where we have to say goodbye to another iconic character. Rest in peace, bro. You were one of my favourites. After killing that big bitch, Cole and Baird become new members of Delta. The squad is put in charge of delivering the Resonator to a mining facility, and our boy Marcus gets a promotion.
And you're in charge, Sergeant Phoenix, as of now.
Sergeant.
Despite the good news, Delta is still far away from the place they need to be, and so Dom suggests going to a stranded camp to borrow a vehicle. Stranded are essentially people who live outside of COG-operated areas, and pretty much hate the COG for destroying civilization. Baird shows some disdain for having to go to the stranded camp, showing the hostility between the two factions, and reinforcing just how much of a cock Baird is. It's not made clear why Dom knows the leader of the group, Franklin, but it is briefly hinted at.
No news on a lady, man. I tell you if I heard anything.
It seems like such a small detail at first, but this small plot point would be greatly expanded on in the sequels. Marcus and Dom have to go get a junker from a nearby gas station, which is where they come into direct contact with Krill. After briefly getting trolled by a pisshead, the duo finds the owner of the gas station, and the trio head back to Franklin's outpost, which is getting smashed to bits by the Locust. After failing to save pretty much everyone, Delta ride off into the sunset and continue on to the mining facility. After making it to the spooky facility, the foursome decide to split into two pairs again in order to protect the Resonator. Marcus and Dom encounter some glowing wretches that explode when dying, which isn't ideal in such cramped corridors. The place seems completely void of life, minus the wretches, and after seeing the remains of the last stranded group to come here, all seems lost. But it turns out there's actually a survivor. Not for long, mind you, but at least he was here for a bit. After fighting through the facility and pissing around in some minecarts, Dom and Marcus encounter a corpser, which is where Marcus Phoenix was born. Baird and Cole finally meet back up with Dom and Marcus after dicking around for an hour, and the squad activate the Resonator. The boys escape and they start to celebrate as their mission was a success.
So we going back to base? I guess so.
Nah, not really. That thing is a piece of shit. So instead, Marcus has to go back to his house and find his dad's Locust research in order to fully map out the underground tunnels. Not a bad plan, but Ram catches wind of the whole thing. Now that's aura farming. Delta and another squad are sent to find and retrieve the valuable data, but once again are ambushed and the other squad are shot down. After landing in a Locust-infested LZ, Delta make their way to the crash site and help the survivors. Cole and Baird stay behind while Dom and Marcus carry on to the Phoenix estate. After getting jump scared by a Berserker, Marcus finds his dad's secret lab and defends his house while Jack downloads the intel. The four friends barely make it out of the house in one piece and quickly make their escape in the APC. They head to the train station in order to board the train containing the light mass bomb, but discover it's been taken over by the Locust. With no other way of stopping the train, Dom and Marcus manage to board it while Cole and Baird once again dick around. Marcus and Dom fight their way to the front of the train, killing drones, Theron guards, wretches, reavers, and even send a Berserker flying off the train. Several carriages later and time's running out. They need to act fast, but are halted by the Locust goat, Ram, who forces the player into one of the most tedious and bullshit boss fights ever conceived. Good luck trying to beat this without a torque bow. Go ahead and reload that save for me. After finally putting the big bastard down, Dom gets on a Raven and leaves Marcus to finish the job. The train is running out of track, and Marcus, understanding the use of dramatic effect as a plot device, waits till the very last second to board the Raven. The missiles launch and decimate the Locust horde and the creatures under the planet of Sarah, and Hoffman, recognising Marcus's hard work, gives him a hand, cementing Marcus's place back into the army. One last victory speech from Hoffman seals the deal as our boys head home to a brighter, Locust-free future.
They do not understand.
Oh, never mind. Yet a mysterious voice lets us know that the Locust aren't gone, and they'll continue to troll humanity till the day they die. Sort of a bittersweet ending, but it's softened by this absolute banger.
Stay cool, baby.
I know you may be upset that the campaign is over, but don't be sad. There's another part of the game that I haven't covered yet, and that's the multiplayer. For anyone unfamiliar with Gears of War's multiplayer, you may have heard a lot of crude rumours. It's sweaty, it's toxic, it's anti-casual, and nowadays it's borderline unplayable. I just want to quickly reassure you that Gears of War's multiplayer is all of these things. Gears multiplayer is one of the most infuriating yet satisfying experiences you will have playing a multiplayer game, and frankly, this goes for every incarnation of the game mode. It isn't for the faint of heart, or someone who wants to quickly pick up a game and shit on people. It plays unlike any other shooter multiplayer I can think of. It's hilarious looking back on old footage of the devs playtesting multiplayer and seeing how they thought Gears of War multiplayer would turn out, only for it to mutate into something so sweaty and toxic. Gears multiplayer is a very different experience to single player. Though both share the same mechanics, they are used in completely different ways. Single player has you use cover to avoid danger and make tactical decisions on where to move next, whereas multiplayer forces you to use cover to enhance movement and close the gap between other players. The Nasher in single player is a weapon you will quickly swap out for a number of weapons, but in multiplayer the Nasher shotgun is the weapon everyone uses, and it's the gun that has since defined Gears multiplayer. Swapping the Nasher out in multiplayer is you essentially forfeiting your life. Though the Lancer and the Snub Pistol have their place in multiplayer, most scenarios involve you and your opponent doing what is pretty much a fucked up tango to see who can land the most shots on the other. It's not uncommon for games to have certain weapons that are the meta, but it's pretty rare for a gun to define a whole game mode of a video game series, but that's exactly what the Nasher did to Gears of War. Gears multiplayer is a very niche experience that's unlike most games, and that's one of the reasons why it only appeals to certain people. Anyone who never played these games growing up and is only used to COD, Battlefield, and other FPS shooters probably won't understand how to play the game and probably won't stick around long enough to learn it. The funny thing is, multiplayer wasn't even planned for Gears of War. If you watch the Road to E3 videos Epic Games released back in the day, they were struggling to translate the tactical gameplay of single player into multiplayer, which, let's be honest, they didn't really do. But somehow they made it work, and thankfully the game mode made the final cut, exposing millions of teenagers and young adults to a feeling of rage beyond compare. Despite the bad rep Gears of War multiplayer gets from a lot of people, it really is fun, especially with friends, and when you decide to troll people with chainsaws. The original Gears of War is an all-time classic. Not only did it set the standard for atmospheric action and horror shooters, but it also proved itself to be more than a mindless shooter. I struggle to find a game series as disrespected and underestimated as Gears of War. The sheer dedication that went into making Gears of War such a well-rounded, engaging, memorable, and addictive experience can't be said enough. What makes the creation of Gears of War feel all the more rewarding is the amount of passion captured in those Road to E3 mini-documentaries. Watching everyone at Epic stress day and night over how great they want the game to be should be an example to other developers on how important it is to launch a game fully finished. Epic Games made something truly special, and if they weren't given given the opportunity to continue the series, they could have looked back on the time they had and said, wow, we made one of the greatest Xbox titles of all time, and thanks to us, people are going to buy the Xbox 360 instead of that shitty PS3. The thing is, Epic Games weren't done. If that ending told us anything, it's that Epic Games wanted to further expand the world of Gears of War and take us on another beautiful and terrifying journey. Plus, Microsoft weren't stupid. They knew a sequel would make money, which is why in 2008, Gears of War 2 was launched. But I'll save that for the next video.
Ah! God damn it!